Very good. So I wanted to talk to you today about memetic propaganda in social media, or the appearance of it and what I've seen. I will just start with a brief intro and all the usual suspects that you would normally see in a conference paper, and then try to get through it fairly quickly. I realize a lot of this is going to come from a Western or Canadian American perspective, so I hope that it offers some sort of insight into some news that you may have been watching from overseas. So this study draws attention to multimodal headlines that could serve as propaganda in social media forums. And I've noticed that memetic, or memes, internet memes, are popping up with far more alacrity with technology, as technology increases, and are happening with far more alacrity than we have expected in preceding years. And with the spread of these memes, and with the spread of these discursive devices, we also get the spread of ideologies and news information. And this is, of course, nothing new. There's nothing new about news spinning certain ideologies one way or another. But we're seeing it with so much alacrity that I believe that it's something worth studying. A few studies have looked at headlines as multimodal wholes, as internet memes projecting propagandized discourse. And this study assumes that certain multimodal memes certainly qualify, and you can see some of the example I have shown here on my slide. So in the current post-truth era, propagandized news is redefining knowledge. We're influencing audiences to see news as more opinions than information. And to be honest, sometimes when I watch two classic polarized news agencies, like, for example, you may have heard of FoxNews and CNN, for example, these are classic polar pairing where you really don't know what happened because they're so separated in their ideological spins that you have to sort of watch them both. And sometimes I wonder if they make it that way so that you spend more money getting cable to watch them both. So memetic propaganda is enriched with emergent discursive practices, and I think this study helps us understand the potential there. So memes are multimodal constructs of image and text designed for flash consumption, resonating a feedback loop of popular culture. And you can see here up on the top screen a typical example of something that has been going around recently. But memes doesn't have to be the traditional meme. It can be anything with a text and an image in a fabric singularity, if you will, that conveys meaning. So memetic headlines behave as bait because their incompleteness is tactical by design. And Montgomery talked about this in 2007, where multimodal headlines are almost a discourse on their own. And headlines are used discursively as memes on social media threads, such as Reddit or Twitter or Facebook and any other social media platform that you can think of. And historically, just a note on propaganda, and this is sort of a flyby of it, but historically it comes from roots in Christian faith, but I've always been fascinated by the visual element to propaganda, the often binary us versus you or us versus them rhetoric that manifests in meaning whenever you look at an image of traditional propaganda. You can see it if you just type in propaganda on Google and in Google Images, and it stands out to you right away. The image component to propaganda has always been fascinating to me because of my fine arts background prior to studying applied linguistics, and I enjoy looking at how image and text work together in a Gestaltian fabric of meaning in this way. So this may be why memes and headlines are perfect vehicles for propagandized news. So for those reasons, we're looking at online headlines used discursively as memes in social media, and ask what power relations and ideologies do they harbor, and if those associations appear to be memetic propaganda. So for my methodology, I wanted to look at, or I wanted to use a multimodal critical discourse analysis that I favor, and it's Machin Mayr's 2012 framework for multimodal critical discourse analysis. I may have included that here in a later slide. So the data that I looked at was a randomly collected pool of 60 multimodal headlines from a number of different news media outlets, but I cross-referenced those to see if they were appearing in social media platforms like Twitter, Facebook, and so on and so forth. And most of the ones that I collected manifested in public discourse as memes. They were just being redistributed, repurposed in online forums. In some cases, without any accompanying text, people were just saying, oh yeah, well you say that, so I say this, and all they do is post a headline from Fox News, for example, and they look memetic in their discursivity. So this study uses Machin Mayr's 2012 framework that looks at iconography, denotation, connotation, gaze, identity, color vectors, and all of those wonderful things in multimodal discourse that we would look at, that Crescent Van Leuven would piloted in their Reading Images book in 1996, which is not in the references, and I apologize for that. But Machin and Mayr have a wonderful framework here. And their framework reveals some memetic headlines to be more propagandized than others when I was looking at this pool of memes. But in the overall analysis of all the memes that I looked at, two major themes emerged. Humorous mockery as fake memes, and real headlines as demonstrative examples of user opinion. So you can see a couple of funny ones that I highlighted here. Is Santa a socialist? This is Sean Hannity, who is a popular anchor at Fox News in America. And when I saw this meme on Twitter, I laughed, first of all, because it was quite funny, but I realized that after a moment, it looked real to me, but after a moment, I realized it was a fake. And of course, Putin may have ties to Russia was also immediately noticeable as a fake because of its humorous intent. But some of these, when you first look at them, you think, oh yeah, there's some truth there, and then you realize that it's mockery. So there were two emergent themes that popped up in the findings. And the memes featuring real headlines outnumbered their fake counterparts about 41 to 19. Whether mock headlines were real or demonstratively supportive of user opinion, whether they were real or mocks, they were demonstrably supportive of user opinion. But 18% appeared to be non-political, or in some cases, the headlines served to either taunt opposition in discourse or entertain fellow members of a discourse community. So in the interest of brevity, I actually just wanted to draw attention to two of them that I found out of the pool, because I noticed they're the same story. That was, and you may have seen this story, some of you, where there was a boy and a number of his peers, high school student peers, who confronted a peaceful Native American demonstration at the Lincoln Memorial in Washington, which is a common place for the proverbial soapbox, if you will, of Washington, where people protest or demonstrate their views. And incidentally, a lot of climate change going on at that location. So, so these two were taken from CNN and Fox News. And if you're looking at the image On the top, that's CNN. The image at the bottom on the right side here, that's Fox News. So after doing the analysis, using Machin Mayr's analysis, it's hard to sort of to give you all of the details, because as a fine artist, I'm somebody who looks in detail at color and vectors and composition and so on and so forth. But I tried to summarize it the best I could in the following way. CNN presents a stereotypical assumption, if you're looking at the top right, by the way, that MAGA hat wearing, for those of you who don't know what MAGA means, it's Make America Great Again, which is a slogan of the current administration, Donald Trump's administration in the United States. Teenagers are uninformed and confrontational, while North American elders, note the uppercase, are inherently wise victims of white aggression. These assumptions appear to be typical of CNN.com, and there's some literature there to support my assertion. Fox News on the bottom right, on the other hand, presents a text framed as the right and presents a visually political right and a much more confrontational composition directed at the North American elder, who is in fact not even given a face in this particular confrontation. And the text reads, Kentucky high school student says he has every right to stand in place. So he is not just a teen, he is a Kentucky high school student. He is the backing of an entire state is behind him. So these assumptions appear to be reproduced narratives of FoxNews.com, and the supporting literature at the bottom of the CNN analysis are reflected here as well. Should be reflected here as well. So what have we learned from all of this, from looking at these memes, and those two in particular? Well, the study is not an arbitration on left or right-leaning politics. It's just underpinning how multimodal headlines serve as deliberately propagandized memes in social media. They're being thrown up and rewritten, rebuilt, reproduced, researched, reanalyzed, and rearticulated, reused to follow the criteria of a discourse as per Krippendorf 2011, information that becomes legitimized version of events. So much so that when I was looking at this particular news story that caught my attention, I actually couldn't, until I watched the video on YouTube, I still didn't know what happened. It wasn't actually a confrontation at all. The boy just went to stand in front of the North American man, and while he was being cocky and a little bit, let's just say a little ballsy in front of this guy, there was no confrontation, there was no contact, and in fact, if you watch the video, it doesn't look as bad as it may appear to be on either of these representations. Okay, so in the 16 memes, a large majority favor certain political affiliations. And what I have discovered, or what I have realized or re-realized, is that instead of news, what many readerships crave are olds. I love the way that Terry Pratchett put it in one of his books. He's one of my favorite writers, because the later satiates their expectations and confirms their biases. And like a symbiotic host, olds are comforting. We see things that we want to see, and it doesn't malnourish our ideological position to which our biases cling. So in this initial investigation of memes as used as propaganda, I would say that future investigations may want to look at how memetic propaganda in headlines is marketed and redistributed across multiple social media platforms over time. We're seeing how they are used in fake Facebook accounts, for example, by certain agencies who are trying to market a particular ideology. And how those memetic transformations infuse or transform existing socio-political discourses. So the goal of the study, and I apologize for just throwing text at the screen, but I wanted to make these points clear, and I'm, of course, willing to share the PowerPoint with anybody who wants it. The goal of the study was to avoid arbitrating on the truthfulness of any memetic headline, but wanted to look at propaganda and public redistribution of memes. In the sample analysis, CNN and Fox News do little to challenge or deviate from the narratives of their audiences. Memetic propaganda, in my opinion, dejournalizes news because it encourages audiences to subscribe to a particular discourse or be excommunicated from that community. An us versus them narrative appears to be the most common thing that I have found in them. And the memetic propaganda appears to deoxygenate a democratic process of a free press because it perpetuates a culture of ideological partisanship in online discourse communities. So this is my initial investigation of memes as propaganda, and apologize for blowing through the slides so quickly. And here are my references. Thank you very much for listening.